Shalom, shalom. First, I'd like to give all praises unto YAHAWAH, YAHAWASHI, RACHAA, QADASH, and double honors unto the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. And honors to you brothers out there in the highways and the byways, teaching this word in all sincerity and in truth. And these Christians are finding out, man, that they ain't diligent. All right, they've been deceived into believing a feel-good story, a fairy tale, but it has no substance when it comes to the what's written in the scriptures. And like I always say, the New Testament is built upon the foundation of the Old Testament, and by that I mean the writings. So everything in the New Testament writings, all the occurrences, has to match up with what was prophesied. All right, it has to match the narrative. Right, and Christianity is a divergence from the narrative. It's a perversion, it's a corruption, it's an inconsistency. Because the scriptures are consistent. Right, the scriptures center around the rise and fall and rise again of the seed whom the Lord has chosen, the seed of Abraham, which is the Israelites, and that's a physical seed on earth. And nobody else. Okay? Now, we're going to go to one of these Christian sites here, the CBN. It says 3 reasons the biblical story requires a focus on Israel. Now, we're going to read. Alright? It says, while many believers in Messiah are hesitant to think of the Bible as a work of literature, we cannot deny that a large portion of the books comprising the Bible contain narrative relating key events and figures that are pivotal to the overall story of redemption conveyed by the Bible as a whole. Okay? See, there's a narrative in the Bible. Just like with any piece of literature, there's a narrative. The Bible has a narrative. That narrative is about the seed of Israel. You go into the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis is about the beginning of man leading to what? The seed of Abraham, which is why when the genealogies are focused, they focus in on what? The seed of Abraham. Yeah, that's the main concern. You don't get the full genealogy of Ham, the full genealogy. You only get what you need. But when it comes to the seed of Abraham, you get the full genealogy. Yeah. Once Abraham came on the scene, the scriptures was about Abraham, then it was about Isaac, then it was about Jacob, then it was about the 12 tribes, until now. The scriptures have never ever been centered around the other nations. Read the Bible, you'll see. Every book, every prophet was sent to the Israelites. Okay? And they break it down into 3 parts. God made a covenant with Abraham. Right? The covenant between God and Abraham marks a major shift in the overall story. Humanity, they like to bring in this humanity thing, but it was never about humanity in the very beginning. It was always about that seed. The sons of God, which has always been a particular seed line of people. But they don't get that. It was never ever about humanity. Ever. Even when you go back into the garden, it was about Adam and his seed. There were other seeds on the planet. What did the Lord say about the sons of God? And then you had the daughters of men. Yeah? Humanity falls in Genesis chapter 3, and 9 chapters later, God promises to make Abraham into a great nation, that his descendants would live in the land he promised them, and that all nations will be blessed through him. Because all nations are going to be, Israel is going to be coming out of those nations. That's already been broken down. This last part is further clarified in Genesis 22, when God says to Abraham, in your seed, all nations of the earth shall be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. Right? And then that is echoed in Revelations. That's echoed in Isaiah the 11th chapter. Because Israel is going to be gathered out and sanctified in the sight of all nations, from among all nations. With this covenant, we begin to see the redemption story unfold and the Messiah is the ultimate fulfillment of Abraham's seed. The focus shifts from our fallen state to the promises of God, and we learn that God always keeps his promises. And what did Paul say? Who were the promises towards? The Israelites. Israel is the main character in the Bible. If we remove Israel from our conversations about scripture, then we ignore the covenants that God made with her, which impact all nations. In fact, 70% of the times the word covenant is mentioned in the Bible, it is linked to Israel. Israel is setting for most of the Bible's key narrative events, including the birth of the Messiah and the giving of God's Spirit. Israel also plays a key role in end times prophecy, and when the Messiah returns, he will reign from Israel in Jerusalem. Right? Now they say Yeshua here, but we know they're talking about YAHAWASHI. It says YAHAWASHI has fulfilled many of the covenants made between God and Israel. Most noteworthy are the Abrahamic and Davidic covenants, since he was descended from Abraham and was from the line of King David. The remaining covenants that have yet to be fulfilled are God's promises to Israel concerning her land, forgiveness, and king, and these will be fulfilled when Israel embraces the YAHAWASHI as their Messiah. When the Messiah returns, he will unite, listen to this, the Gentile believers who have been spiritually grafted into Israel with the Jewish believers who already belong to Israel. No. The Gentiles that were being grafted back into the Commonwealth were Israelites that were scattered throughout the other nations. And that's what's backed up in the scriptures. There's nowhere in the scriptures where the Lord ever prophesied good towards these other nations. They have no prophetic foundation for that interpretation of the scriptures. Okay, they have no background for that. You go to Isaiah 11:11, it tells you how the Lord is going to gather together the remnant of his people from among all the different nations. How he's going to, all the way through the scriptures, Lord speaks about gathering back his people back together from among the nations. Right? What does it say here? See, they will make the Most High a liar. These other nations are not going to be joined onto us in any way, shape, or form. Right? This is Deuteronomy 33:28. Israel, the seed of Israel, then shall dwell in safety alone. These other nations ain't going to be joined onto us or grafted in. That's talking about Israelites. The fountain of Jacob shall be upon a land of corn and wine. Also his heavens shall drop down dew. Happy art thou, O Israel. You see? Who is like unto thee? See, they're saying there is people like unto them. No. Who is like unto thee, O people saved by the Lord? Thy shield, the shield of thy help, and who is the sword of thy excellency? And thine enemies shall be found liars unto thee, and thou shalt tread upon their high places. When you're saying that other nations can be saved, you're actually directly going against what this scripture states. It says, happy is Israel, who is like unto them. So how can you then draw other nations on the same level? It doesn't work like that, man. Now I want to go to Isaiah 35. All right. Isaiah 35:1 says this: the wilderness and the solitary place shall be glad for them, and the desert shall rejoice and blossom as the rose. Who's this talking about? The Israelites. Right? Because you go back into Isaiah 34, it's talking about the end times and talking about the Israel being brought back into the land. Right? In verse 16 and 17. 17 is talking about the land being divided. Yeah? Because that's what the Messiah is coming back to do. To restore the nation of Israel. That is the salvation. But Israel was scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. So when you go back then, you had the Jews in Jerusalem, but you also had the Israelites that were outside of that commonwealth, who were scattered among the nations, who were being called foreigners, because they were dwelling as followers among these nations and speaking their languages and following after their customs. That's the Gentiles that are going to be drawn back, because they're Israelites, and the promises is towards them. And that is consistent with the narrative of the Bible. The Lord drawing in other nations is inconsistent with the narrative of the Bible. Do you understand that? There's no prophetic foundation for such a thing. Especially when the Lord said he don't care about them other nations. So why would he save them? And save them from what? When they're the ones that are violating his people. He's coming to save us from them. And you saying he's going to save them? It's confusion. Right? It shall blossom abundantly. Let me say this. There's never been anywhere in the scriptures where the Lord was looking to save mankind. Point blank period. It shall blossom abundantly and rejoice even with joy and singing. The glory of Lebanon shall be given unto it. This is talking about the land of Israel. The excellency of Carmel and Sharon, they shall see the glory of the Lord and the excellency of our God. Right? Strengthen ye the weak hands and confirm the feeble knees. Say to them that are fearful heart, be strong, fear not. Right? Jeremiah said the same thing in Jeremiah 30. Behold, your God will come with vengeance, even God with a recompense. He will come and save you. And that's why it's written in Luke, we're going to be delivered from the hand of them that hate us. This is all about salvation for the seed of Israel. That is the plot. Yeah? Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf shall be unstopped. That shows you what the miracles that the Lord did 2,000 years ago represented. It represented the beginning of the salvation of Israel. Then shall the lame man leap as a hart, and the tongue of the dumb sing. For in the wilderness shall waters break out, and streams in the desert. That represents renewal, represents rejuvenation, life. Right? Beginning with this word, but then it's also going to happen physically in the land of Israel. It's going to become like Eden again. And it tells you that in Ezekiel the 36th chapter. And the parched ground shall become a pool, and the thirsty land springs of water. In the habitation of dragons, where each lays shall be grass with reeds and rushes. And a highway shall be there, and a highway, and it shall be called the way of holiness. The unclean shall not pass over it, but it shall be for those. The warfaring men, though fools, shall not err therein. No lion shall be there, nor any ravenous beast shall go upon thereon. It shall not be found there, but the redeemed shall walk there. Now who are the redeemed? Which that the word there would be Ga'al. The ransomed of the Lord shall return and come to Zion with song and everlasting joy upon their heads. They shall obtain joy and gladness, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. And that goes hand in hand with Revelations 21:3. And also Jeremiah. Yeah, that's the new covenant. The Lord shall wipe away all tears. It's talking about Israel. Israel are the ransomed of the Lord. What does it mean to be ransomed? Yeah, we're being bought back. We were bought with a price. YAHAWASHI ransomed us back. They ain't talking about the other nations, man. It never was. It never was intended to be towards any other nation. And that's the mystery of the Gentiles. It's talking about Israelites, man. Ransomed. To ransom, redeem, rescue, deliver. Yeah? That's why it's talking about they shall come to Zion. Talking about the Israelites returning. How can other nations return to Zion? Zion is not their homeland. You understand? Zion is not their inheritance. Zion is the inheritance of the seed of Abraham, as he had promised, and they shall not share it with anyone. That's confusion. The Lord don't believe in that. The Lord don't even believe in you planting the same crops together and you mixing fibers, and you think he's gonna mix up a whole bag of nations together to create one nation? Are you lost your mind? The nation of Israel, the seed of Israel, was separated from all other seeds, and it's going to continue to be separated. And it's blasphemy to say that the Lord is going to defile his holy people by bringing in the unholy seeds among it. That's a corruption, and that was never the Lord's intention. So if that, I'm going to say shalom.